They were a happy family of 3, living in this warm, comfortable home. But no one could have predicted within just 4 years, all 3 of them would be dead, turning this place into a house of death. The neighbors were terrified to even speak of it. Some were convinced the place was cursed by a demon. But as investigators dug deeper, a meticulously planned conspiracy and a jaw-dropping truth began to surface. Hey everyone, welcome to Brian Crime TV. I'm Brian. Today we're looking into the story behind what people called the cursed house. So what exactly happened back then? So let's rewind to 2013 and piece together the fragments of this tragedy. Mississauga sits in Ontario, on the western shore of Lake Ontario. It borders Toronto to the east and is part of the Greater Toronto Area, the 7th most densely populated city in Canada. At 3635 Pine Avenue in Mississauga stands a modern 6-bedroom home. It features tall windows and a sloping roof. And that's exactly where our story takes place. For simplicity, we'll just call it House 3635. 40-year-old Caleb Harrison was the sole owner of the house. He adored his 2 kids. So much so, he had their names tattooed on his shoulder. After his divorce, custody initially went to his ex-wife. But in 2010, it was awarded back to him. The kids only stayed with their mom on weekends, or by mutual agreement. Caleb was a gentle, approachable guy. Outside of work, he dedicated almost all his time to his children. He took excellent care of them, a highly devoted father by all accounts. August 22, 2013, he was coaching his daughter's softball game. Then he drove home alone. The kids were staying with their mother. That evening, after a long phone call with his new girlfriend, he put his phone on silent and drifted off to sleep. He had no idea a nightmare was about to strike. Outside, a shadowy figure was creeping closer in the dark. The next morning arrived. Caleb's co-workers were frantic. He hadn't shown up for work, no calls answered, no text returned. He had vanished without a trace. That was completely out of character. By noon, worried co-workers rushed to Caleb's place, asking the housekeeper what was going on. She was just as confused. She said she'd arrived early to clean, but hadn't seen Caleb leave. And she hadn't gone into his bedroom yet. They pushed the door open, and the scene inside would haunt them forever. Caleb was lying in bed. He wasn't breathing. They immediately dialed 911. Police and paramedics arrived on the scene. An examination revealed 2 deep scratch marks on Caleb's chest and swollen knuckles on his right hand. Bruises and abrasions marked his chin and neck. Clearly, he had fought back before he died. His hyoid bone was fractured, and the cartilage around his vocal cords was damaged. The conclusion: he had been strangled. Time of death was estimated around midnight. After finishing their work, the responding paramedics felt something was off. The house felt familiar, like they'd been there before. Neighbors nearby were deeply unsettled. Some were downright terrified. Everyone kept staring at House 3635, thinking, this place has to be cursed. Because Caleb wasn't the first person to die mysteriously in that house. He wasn't the second. He was the third. His father and mother had both died there, one after the other. 3 family members gone in 4 years. It looked like a wiped-out family. Something was deeply wrong. No wonder the neighbors shuddered every time it came up. So, was House 3635 really cursed, like the neighbors suspected? Let's start with the original owners of the house. Bill and Bridget. They were Caleb's parents. Bridget was born in Ontario in 1946. Though a girl, she was adventurous and fiercely independent from a young age. Strikingly beautiful and talented in every way. She appeared on multiple TV programs, a successful actress. One day, in the network's wardrobe department, Bridget met Bill, witty, handsome, and charming. They started dating. Despite their different backgrounds, he was black, she was white. Racial prejudice ran deep back then. Interracial relationships and marriages were widely frowned upon. Friends and family didn't approve of their romance. But they didn't care. To Bridget, Bill wasn't just handsome, he was educated, accomplished, and the kind of man she wanted to spend her life with. In 1969, they married, ignoring society's judgment. They moved to Mississauga, Ontario to start fresh. A new chapter began. Bridget became a teacher. Bill worked at a supermarket chain. Both worked hard, built successful careers, and shared a stable, loving marriage. but due to health issues, they couldn't have children of their own. Yet, they both loved kids, so what could they do? In 1973, they decided to adopt. 6-month-old Caleb joined their family. 2 years later, in 1975, they bought House 3635. The family of 3 lived peacefully there. Caleb grew up well under his parents' devoted care. As a kid, he faced bullying at school due to Tourette syndrome. But thankfully, the symptoms faded as he got older. After high school, Caleb went straight into the workforce. With only a high school diploma, he landed manual labor jobs in transport and logistics. The pay wasn't great, but he didn't mind, plus, his parents were well off. He never had to worry about money. After years of hard work, Bill had climbed from an entry-level job to upper management. His mother had become a school board director. Both were respected, successful figures in the community. In 2000, 27-year-old Caleb was working at a doll store. One day, by chance, he noticed 19-year-old Melissa at the front desk. Just one look, and he was hooked. Melissa had just graduated high school, a sweet, kind-hearted girl. She loved animals. She was actually engaged, but her fiancé backed out at the last minute, chasing a wild lifestyle instead of settling down. It left Melissa heartbroken. She eventually called off the engagement. What she really wanted was stability, marriage, motherhood. She loved kids. So Caleb's timing couldn't have been better. They started dating, and things moved quickly. Caleb was attentive and protective of Melissa. He drove her to work every single day. After a few months, they got married. They bought a new home in Georgetown, about 30 minutes from his parents' place. They both wanted a big family, and soon, they had a son and a daughter. On paper, it was perfect loving couple, 2 kids, total happiness. But in reality, there's no such thing as a flawless romance, no life without its storms. They fought constantly over trivial things. In 2005, after a violent argument, Melissa called the police. Caleb ended up locked up for 3 days. After that, they separated. Caleb moved back into House 3635 with his parents. Melissa got sole custody of the kids. Later, they switched to joint custody, but the fighting never stopped. It mostly revolved around who got the kids. Melissa even filed 5 unverified allegations, claiming Caleb or his parents were physically abusing the children. During this time, Caleb started seeing a new girlfriend. Melissa also found a new boyfriend online, Chris. Even though she and Caleb weren't officially divorced yet, she got engaged to her new boyfriend. Then, something happened. Caleb caused a fatal drunk driving crash, 1 dead, 3 injured, on March 9, 2009. Because of that, he was sentenced to 18 months in prison. While he was serving time, partial custody of the kids was transferred to his parents, Bill and Bridget. April 16, 2009. Bridget was at a school meeting. It didn't end until 9 p.m. With her son in prison, only her husband Bill was home. Usually, he'd leave all the lights on to welcome her back. But tonight, when she got home, the house was pitch black. That was highly unusual. She panicked, calling out his name. She found him collapsed on the first-floor bathroom floor, not breathing. She called the police immediately. Officers and a forensic examiner arrived. Local forensic examiner Charles examined the body and found Bill's sternum was fractured. There were bruises on his head, face, and neck. He concluded the broken sternum was from a fall. The neck marks, he said, were from a necklace. He ruled it an accident. Cause of death: acute cardiac arrhythmia, even though Bridget insisted. Her husband was perfectly healthy, with no history of heart disease. Once the autopsy report came in, the police dropped it. June 15th. Caleb was released on parole, devastated by his father's sudden death. He was also deeply suspicious. But the body had already been cremated. Even with doubts, there was no way to verify anything. He had to swallow it. He had no idea. The nightmare was just beginning. April 21st, 2010. His 8-year-old son came home from school. He opened the door and found his grandmother Bridget lying motionless at the bottom of the stairs. The 8-year-old ran to a neighbor's house to call for help. An initial forensic exam revealed abrasions and bruises on the body's chin and neck. The remains were sent to the downtown coroner's office for a full autopsy. 2 days later, the examiner reported the neck injuries, along with petechial hemorrhaging on her cheeks and eyes, suggested compression of the neck. Most likely, she had been strangled. Additionally, there were bruises on her legs and arms, fractured ribs, but the key finding was a fracture at the back of her neck. That pointed to a possible fall down the stairs, so the examiner couldn't confirm the exact cause of death. But 2 years, 2 bizarre deaths in a row. That couldn't be normal. This time, police didn't rush to close it. They opened a homicide investigation. Their first suspect, Caleb. After all, his parents had built up a substantial fortune. He was the sole heir, plus he was adopted. All of that fueled suspicion. Meanwhile, Caleb's ex-wife Melissa told police he had a violent temper and a strained relationship with his mother, Bridget. They argued constantly.
He didn't have a great relationship with his mom. They had, they would argue a lot. I know that they had a rough, growing up stage where they wouldn't get along.
Also said, Caleb had a short fuse. Once, just because someone cut in line, he grabbed them by the throat. He and his mother had serious conflicts. On the surface, Caleb looked highly suspicious, but the investigation revealed he had a solid alibi. By June 10th, police had found no further leads. The coroner officially listed the cause of death as undetermined. Ultimately, police announced there was no evidence of foul play. With the case changing hands multiple times, it became a mess. And just like that, it was swept under the rug. Now, Caleb was suddenly murdered. This forced police to reconsider. Maybe Bill and Bridget's deaths weren't accidents at all. Maybe they were murdered, and the killer was likely the same person. As for the rumors about House 3635 being cursed, police dismissed that entirely. They merged all 3 cases into one investigation. Across all 3 deaths, there were no signs of forced entry at the house. Nothing valuable was stolen, so police turned their focus inward to the family. The Harrison family was large. They gathered at House 3635 every year. From that circle, police quickly zeroed in on 2 prime suspects: Caleb's ex-wife Melissa and her current husband, Chris. They had clear, ongoing conflicts with Caleb. They'd been fighting over custody for years. They'd even abducted the kids at one point, which is why sole custody was returned to Caleb in April 2010. And just 2 weeks after Caleb's murder, Melissa successfully petitioned for full custody. She also stood to inherit 3 luxury homes and a massive estate. They had clear motive. While searching House 3635, police found Bridget's diary. Here's what it said. July 3, 2010. Melissa was hysterical. She screamed at Bill and me. "Do you think my kids are happy with you? They hate you. I had to lock them in the car because they refused to come to your house." July 8th, Chris yelled at us through the car window. "You're going to pay for this, you fucking bastard." July 10th, Chris cursed at me again. "You're going to hell for the lies you told." In 2008, Melissa sent an email to Bill and Bridget. If Caleb couldn't care for the kids, no one should take them except her. They harbored intense hatred for Caleb's parents, and even deeper resentment toward Caleb himself. When he was arrested for the Dewey, Chris became highly active online. He created countless posts painting Caleb as a violent, irredeemable drunk. He even attached a defaced photo of him. Chris urged netizens to demand the harshest possible sentence and tried to gather 100,000 signatures. It didn't work. The court handed down 18 months. Chris was furious. He wanted Caleb locked away forever. But that wasn't all. Reviewing Bill and Bridget's cases, police found 2 striking coincidences. The first one. In mid-April 2009, Bill planned a long road trip with the kids. The kids mentioned it to their teacher, which meant Melissa found out. Just 2 days later, on April 16th, Bill died under mysterious circumstances. The very next day, Melissa and Chris abducted the kids. At that point, Bridget was facing a dead husband, a son in prison, and missing grandchildren. She was completely broken. For the next few months, Melissa and Chris vanished. Police issued a nationwide warrant, but couldn't find them. In reality, they drove the kids out of Mississauga, crossing multiple cities, finally settling in Nova Scotia. They rented a place, changed their names, and kept a low profile. Months later, while paying rent, Chris accidentally used a check with his real name. That exposed them. They were arrested. The second coincidence. After Melissa was brought back to Mississauga, she was released on bail. Her kidnapping hearing was set for April 22, 2010, but the day before April 21st, key witness Bridget died mysteriously. When coincidences pile up, they aren't coincidences anymore, they are premeditated. The problem was, police had no direct evidence, and the pair refused to confess. They even provided alibis. Even though potential suspect DNA was found under Caleb's fingernails, it didn't match anyone in the database. Getting a court order to test Melissa and Chris's DNA was slow and complicated. So police decided to investigate covertly first. They confiscated Melissa's phone. They secretly planted a tracker on her car to prevent another escape. Plainclothes officers tailed Chris, collecting discarded drink bottles and other items to extract DNA. They also staked out their home, collecting all their trash for analysis. Eventually, they recovered a drink bottle Chris had thrown away. Inside a garbage bag, they found a pair of shoes worn only a few times, and black latex gloves, all containing DNA matching Chris and Caleb. Bank records and Walmart surveillance footage showed Chris bought those shoes at 9:30 p.m. the night before Caleb was killed. During surveillance, police also noticed Melissa and Chris showing signs of planning another escape. After winning custody, they immediately started packing. Luckily, thanks to the car tracker, police followed them to Londonderry, Nova Scotia. They'd already secured jobs on a farm. The area was remote, once a booming steel town. Now in decline after the factories closed, very few people lived there. But the search warrant for their home hadn't come through yet, so police had to wait. Still, Melissa and Chris had their 4 kids, plus Caleb's 6 kids in total. Running with that many wouldn't be easy. It showed they genuinely loved children. In early October, the search warrant finally arrived. Though most things were packed, the hasty flight meant several items were left in the trailer, including 2 laptops and USB drives. The computers and phones contain highly incriminating search histories. February 11, 2010. If grandparents have custody, who gets it when they die? April 11, 2010. How long does it take to die from suffocation? May 6, 2010. How to tell if your home phone is tapped? July 17, 2011. How to extract poison from oleander? July 18, 2011. How to extract toxins from plants? July 18, 2011. How to make poison? July 22, 2011. Easy ways to kill and get away with it. August 23, 2011. How to bypass a locked patio door? Piecing it all together, the evidence pointed directly to Melissa and Chris. Police prepared to move in. January 2014. 6 police cruisers rolled up to Melissa's new place in Nova Scotia. They successfully arrested her and Chris. Both were charged with first-degree murder. They were interrogated separately. Melissa denied everything from start to finish, refusing to say a word. But after 13 hours of questioning, and faced with the evidence, Chris finally confessed.
Caleb, I snuck out in the middle of the night. Melissa had no idea. I left, I went there. I got into his house. Proceeded to go up to the bedroom. I hit him in the chest. And when he sprung up, we began to struggle. I threw him into the shelving unit beside his bed. He tried to bribe me with money. I didn't speak to him. I just knocked him to the ground and then proceeded to choke him.
What police didn't expect was, Chris also confessed to killing Bridget.
I knocked on her door. She opened the door. And pretended to have a letter to give to the children. She refused the letter, so I then forced my way into the house and I attacked her.
What did you do?
I hit her a couple times. proceeded to squeeze her neck. Until she stopped breathing and laid on the floor. I never meant to find him. I never meant to find her. That's not the plan. That's not what I wanted.
He insisted Melissa knew nothing about it. It was his solo act. He only told his wife after it was done. Police didn't buy it. So, they set a trap. A few days into the interrogation, they locked them in a room with hidden microphones. They took the bait and started whispering. I already confessed to Caleb and Bridget's murders. That way, your sentence will be lighter. Melissa just called him an idiot. Police had no leads on Bridget's death. Why confess to that? That 30-minute recording became the most crucial piece of evidence. September 2017, the trial began. Chris's case was straightforward. At the crime scene, and under Caleb's fingernails, they found massive amounts of his DNA, plus the gloves, shoes, fake alibi, and most importantly, the recording. And his own confession. Yet in court, he fought hard. He admitted to killing Caleb, but claimed it was an accident. He only meant to injure him. To get more time with the kids, he just used too much force and accidentally killed him. So, it should be manslaughter. As for Bridget's death, Chris recanted in court. He said his earlier confession was false. He lied to protect his wife, sacrificing himself. But the prosecution argued his initial confession and the wiretap were clear and consistent. The details matched the forensic report perfectly. It didn't sound like a lie. Ultimately, the jury unanimously agreed Chris was guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder for Bridget and Caleb's deaths. Sentenced to life in prison, with no parole for 25 years. Melissa's trial was more complicated. No physical evidence linked her to Caleb's murder scene, meaning she wasn't physically present. But the prosecution argued, based on motive, Melissa was the mastermind, calling the shots. Chris was just the muscle. The wiretap proved she was deeply involved. An accomplice. So for Caleb's murder, Melissa was also sentenced to life, no parole for 25 years. But for Bridget's death, the jury deadlocked. So she faced no charges for that. Then there was Bill's case. Though both were suspects, police had never properly investigated it back then. There were 0 leads. Chris's defense lawyer even argued Bill's broken sternum was caused by CPR from paramedics. And since the body was cremated, it couldn't be re-examined. So both walked free from that charge. Even though both killers got life sentences, the victims' families were furious with the outcome. Not because they wanted the death penalty, but because they were deeply disappointed in the police. Law enforcement made severe errors across all 3 cases. If they had taken it seriously from the start, they could have caught the killer when Bill died. The next 2 tragedies could have been prevented. The family wouldn't have been wiped out. Caleb's cousin, Gallant, said, "This tragedy destroyed their family's trust in the police. It left them cold." Ever since Bill's death, they kept telling police, "You have to investigate these 2. No one else had a motive." But no matter how many times they said it, police ignored them. And in Bill and Bridget's cases, police did virtually nothing. There were clear marks on their necks and bodies. DNA technology was mature, yet police never collected it. The coroner's competence and reports were equally alarming. In Bill's case, Charles was considered a top local forensic examiner. But later investigations revealed he had a terrible reputation, infamous. He lacked basic forensic pathology knowledge, a complete amateur. In 2005, Ontario's chief coroner reviewed 44 of his autopsies. 20 of them contained major errors. Some even said his negligence was worse than murder. Over his career, he handled over 1,000 autopsies. It's terrifying to think how many wrongful convictions resulted. Many of his cases were later reopened and appealed. Yet this notorious figure was treated as an expert by police. and they built their investigations on his flawed reports. The victims' families demanded a thorough police investigation and the public accounting of every mistake and why it happened. The Peel Regional Police Chief at the time promised an internal review, but after a month, it was quietly shelved. The Toronto Star repeatedly requested updates, but got nothing. The so-called review was never made public. In 2016, the Toronto Star conducted an independent investigation. It uncovered a shocking truth. Since 2010, roughly 640 Peel officers had been disciplined for misconduct. That's nearly a third of the entire force. And it wasn't just Peel. Misconduct discipline rates across all of Ontario were alarmingly high. These numbers exposed the chaos within Canadian policing at the time. Behind it all, more covered-up wrongful convictions and negligence likely lurked. In October 2019, after the former chief retired, Chief Lee took over Peel Regional Police. He stated solemnly, "The Harrison family murders caused immense harm to the family and the community. The decade-long investigation was deeply flawed." 497-0. Admitting to major errors in the Bridget case and accepting full responsibility for the consequences. Meanwhile, due to serious flaws in the forensic analysis, the Chief Coroner's Office and Ontario's Forensic Pathology Service jointly launched an internal review and implemented sweeping reforms, hoping that after these strict overhauls, mistakes like this would never happen again. As for the killers, Melissa and Chris both filed appeals after their convictions. Chris's appeal was swiftly dismissed, but Melissa's was accepted by the court. After reviewing the case, the appellate court found that during Melissa's original trial, the secretly recorded police tapes and the shoes Chris had purchased, the presiding judge had mishandled both pieces of evidence, so they overturned the original verdict. But a new trial is still pending. Melissa's family posted bail of 285,000 Canadian dollars to get her out. She's now under house arrest at her parents' home, wearing an ankle monitor and strictly forbidden from leaving the property. It's worth noting, though, that after the crime, she divorced Chris and went on to marry someone else while behind bars. Her 4 children are now living with her current husband. As for the final custody of her 2 children was Caleb, that hasn't been made public due to privacy concerns. Rumor has it they've been placed in foster care. Today, the house at 3635 has new owners. The interior has been completely renovated, almost as if the past has been wiped clean. But whenever neighbors walk past, they can't help but remember the chilling history. "I just hope the new family can live happily here," one neighbor reflected. That wraps up today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Your support means the world to me. I'm Brian. I'll see you in the next one.